And the finding aid is something that archives and rare book repositories create to help you find your way through one of these kinds of collections. It's kind of like a catalog, but not exactly, because every organization, every set of records really is unique and so requires a different sort of finding aid. So the finding aid for the Zonta Club, you have a repetition of the material we've just had here, and then over here we have the actual finding aid itself. It has a descriptive summary, right? That's the thing we were just looking at. And then it has a history, a very brief history of the Zonta Club itself, which actually does have a little bit more material. It tells you that, for instance, they met at area restaurants, that they were able to hold an international convention, it had a membership of 100 at its height, and so on and so forth. And then it tells you the scope and content of the collection. Right, it tells you what actually is within the collection. So this is the description that we saw earlier in the abstract, and then we have a little bit more material. So their community service projects had to do with giving contributions of magazine subscriptions to the Veterans Hospital, woolen gloves to the Blossom Hill School for Girls, and, according to the archivist, these records provide an understanding of the ways in which women banded together throughout the 20th century to address their common concerns and improve their status within their chosen occupations and community. And the statement of arrangement, and this terminology, by the way, is very common in archives. You're likely to see very much the same phrases repeated in other places. It's arranged alphabetically by subject and document, and then chronologically. There's an explanation of restrictions. Apparently everybody can look at it. It's not uncommon for there to be restrictions on access until a certain amount of time after the original creator of a collection has died, or restrictions on publication. Those are quite common, so you always want to look at the restrictions if you're trying to do a research subject. There's the indexing terms, which you've already seen. These are terms which if you used in their database would bring up this club, but it also shows you what the archivist considers to be related subject matters. So you might find other materials that are similar to this in their collection this way. And actually you might find other materials similar to this in other libraries by looking under these terms. So we have also related material. You notice over here that there are actually photographic records. Apparently there's a bunch of photographs in the Cleveland Photographs section. We would definitely want to look at those if we were researching this club. And then finally, administrative information. This tells you what's in the folder, who donated it, Margaret Bueller and Frida Collis in this case, and who was the archivist who did the cataloging. In this case, actually, it was Barry Euler-Stith, who is one of the faculty members at the institution where I work. So it's on this page, on the detailed description of the collection, that we find the meat of the materials. And it's also on this page that I can show you a little bit of the important information about how to navigate your way through archival materials. So we already found the call number for the collection, and I told you that you probably would need more than the call number, and here's why. When you look at the organization of the collection, you see that we have box on one side and folder on the left. There are, as you may recall, 6 boxes in this collection, and each box has within it a number of folders. So, for instance, in box 1, we have a folder devoted to a fundraising party. We have 10 years worth of bulletins of The Bubble and 21 years worth of Z Club news for District 5. We have their bylaws, and then we have committee reports and correspondence for a number of the committees for a varying number of years. And they're kind of scattershot, actually, if you look here. So the fellowship committee, we have minutes, we have reports and correspondence from 1931 to 38 and 1952 So we have a 14-year gap there. That is interesting. The Bubble Committee apparently disappeared after 1932, right? So this collection of committee reports in and of itself hints at some changes and discontinuities in the organization of the club over time. But we'll notice each of these things is in a different folder. And if we go down to box 2, we see that we have some more correspondence, and then the membership files, and another bunch of minutes. And farther down in box 3, we have all the personnel records and the president's records. Normally, you're not going to want to look at all 6 boxes at once. Me, for instance, if I were starting to learn about a club, I probably would not begin by looking at all of the scrapbooks. Maybe I would want 1 or 2 sets of scrapbooks, but probably what I would want to do is start with probably the president's files or the folder with the committee reports. That might give me a sense of an overview of how things were working. So I myself, if I were starting with this project, would probably begin with boxes 1 and 3, requesting them. Usually in a collection like this, what they're going to bring you is the box and not individual folders. It depends, though, on the archive. You might actually get the box and the be able to order them just by folders, but I never quite recommend that if you're doing a search. At the Western Reserve Historical Society, the folder contents as listed in the finding aid probably really do reflect what is going to be in the folders when you get them, but that's not always the case. First, because sometimes archivists make mistakes, and second, because if some other researcher has come through and gone through these objects, sometimes they get misfiled afterwards. So I would at least want to look at a whole box at once, and they might not even send you just the folders at once. Incidentally, this kind of thing is why historians are so attached to rather complicated, arcane systems of documentation. It's why we're wedded to the Chicago Manual of Style here in the United States, because we have to be able to communicate to each other that I got this document at the Western Reserve Historical Society, in the Zonta Club Collection, in box 3, in folder 48, in the minutes for 1953, on June 28th, right? We need to be able to communicate that to people, because you can imagine what it would be like to be sitting here trying to figure out where in box 3 or which of folders 47 through 53 had our object. So we need to be, as historians, very exact about where we get materials. And as you can see here, this material for box 2, just right up here, as it happens, Barry Steth has indicated that the membership and classification files for, yea, verily, 1927 to 1953. So we are looking at 26 years worth of undated records. Imagine trying to communicate which records you're looking at. You have to have very exacting ways of doing that so that somebody else can find your materials. Anyway, this is an example of a finding aid for a single organization. When you look at a larger organization, when you look at government records, you're going to find similar kinds of things happening.